I really don't remember how long ago it was, but I remember thinking to myself one day, I should do a massive review series that details games that I grew up with. And it kind of fell through when I realized that most of the games I grew up with, I actually wanted to do a detailed review for. That and how much of a pain it can be to get some of these older games working. I finished Jill the Jungle and started on Ken's Labyrinth, but no matter what I did, the game refused to run, either crashing outright or running at ungodly slow speeds, and then freezing up. So I gave up, because screw that. Yet my footage of Jill the Jungle is still available, so I figured between last week's Doom review and next week's probably big review, now would be a great time to talk about Jill and her jungle. Wow, when I put it that way, it sounds like a porno. Jill of the Jungle is a DOS game released by Epic Mega Games in 1992. I've mentioned it for a second in my Zargon review, but always wanted to really do a full-fledged feature on this game because it's one of the first games I ever played, back on my old Tandy with the DOS shell interface. Ah, those were the days. You play as Jill, who seems to be some sort of random warrior who's traveling through her jungle, just slaying random animals. The game was released in episodes, which was common for the time. In this case, there's 3 of them, and each one is an extension of the previous game, or episode, to be more literal. In the first one, you're just traveling through the forest. In the second, you're going through a literal hell. And in the third, you save a prince. The story isn't really expanded upon at all, so you can just make up all the fine details as you play, because, well, I don't know where I'm going with this. Just know that you're jumping around and killing things. So as such, Jill stars in a platformer. You're going to be doing a lot of jumping, a lot of shooting, and even some puzzle solving. The overall goal is to finish the game, but you also want to go for that high score, because since this is a PC game, it'll be saved. Playing the game is extremely simple. The arrow keys move you around, so if you're used to using WSAD, you'll have to ditch that system for this one. Shift jumps, which has always been kind of weird, and Alt throws your weapon. If you need any help, you can press F1, or you can just look into the top left of the screen, because the controls, other than the movement, are helpfully listed there. In addition, there's some other options, including a turtle mode that slows the game down to almost bullet time speeds. Honestly, there's never a reason to do this, so don't bother. So what kind of weapons do you get in the game? Well, to be exact, there's 2. One is your standard knife, which Jill strangely throws like a boomerang. Most of the time, you only have one on hand, so when you throw it, you'll have to wait for it to come back. It also travels in a small wave-like fashion, so it's easy to hit things that aren't exactly on level with it, although you do need to be careful because many of the enemies are lower than Jill, and as such, cannot be normally hit unless you are standing below the enemy. The only problem with the knife is that if you don't collect it, although it will follow you around for a bit, after a few seconds it'll just float to the floor, requiring you to pick it up again. And yet there's other times where it'll get stuck in places that don't make much sense, and if it gets stuck in an area you can't reach, well then you're just going to have to try to complete the level without a weapon. Sometimes this can be a big deal, but other times it won't be. You can also obtain a bladed chakram-like weapon. This can best be compared to the rock from Zargon, though not quite as useless. The weapon is thrown downwards as opposed to the rock's upward trajectory. The blade smacks the ground and then bounces up, sometimes using some momentum behind it. So if you throw it from a high place, it'll bounce much higher than if you throw it right at your feet. Of course, this isn't always the case. Sometimes you'll use the blade and then it'll go spiraling out of control, going in a path that would make scientists go, "What the hell?" The real advantage of this blade over the knife is the fact that you can kill the enemies that are lower than Jill. There are also a few animamorphs available at certain points in the game. You get a phoenix-like bird that can fly and shoot a weird-looking fireball. This is the more common form you'll take in regards to the animals, but you can also find a fish. Naturally, this can swim underwater quickly, and it shoots something. I can't even hazard a guess on what exactly you're firing. The strange thing about the fish is that your shots appear from above you, so you need to consider this when trying to kill other aquatic creatures. You do have a health meter and infinite lives. If your health is getting low, you can collect apples to replenish it. If you die, most enemies will remain dead, so if you're really struggling in a level, you can just keep inching forward until you hit the goal. The game isn't too difficult, but some stages will test you, like the first true level of Hell in the second episode. You'll be fighting multiple flying demons. I don't know if I now have a different version of the game, but the original one that I did have, these demons used to take about 6 hits with the spinning blades each. Now it only takes 1, which really feels dumbed down. Each episode also has its own form of a map system. Jill Episode 1 has a side view stage that acts as a hub. The second episode doesn't feature a map, and only shows Jill moving right from the end of one stage to the next. Episode 3 gives you an overhead view, which must be where Zargon got its map. It's a bit odd that each episode has its own way of showing you a map, but that's just how it is. The music and graphics are pretty standard for the time. There are some cool gradient effects, like with the phoenix and its fireballs, and the harmful environment fire always impressed me. Yet the sound effects are just plain strange. Even weirder, The effects range from each episode. The noise you hear when collecting a weapon in one episode might be completely different from the same thing in another episode. And if you really want to hear all the sound effects, there is a form of a sound test called a noisemaker. Basically, each key has a sound mapped to it, so every time you press one, you get a sound effect. Weird. I think that's really all that I have. Overall, Jill the Jungle is a pretty quirky game that's still enjoyable to this day. It's easily completable in a day, as it's not overly challenging, and each episode takes about an hour to complete. Sure, some of the weapons can take some getting used to in order to effectively kill things, but it doesn't take too much away from the game. It's also easily playable on modern systems thanks to DOSBox. You can scour the internet if you really want to play it, as many shareware and abandonware sites feature the game as a free download. If you like classic games, give this one a go. You'll probably like it. Final score? 8 out of 10. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.